We're surrounded by what Atlantic City needs and deserves more than anything, and that's really solid private sector investment that puts men and women back to work, doing what they do best, and this complex will do that. Thousands of jobs are being created not only by the men and women you see around me who are building this place, but there'll be thousands more after they're done.
Well, that was then, and this is now. It was supposed to be the casino that launched the turnaround of AC. Instead, the Revel Casino, which cost $2.4 billion, that's with a B, billion dollars to build, never once turned a profit. And today, word came that the casino has been unable to find a buyer. So the casino, which opened in 2012, everybody, will close on September 10th of this year. More than 3,000 workers will lose their jobs in the process. The Revel, just the latest victim of oversaturation in the gaming industry and of the Atlantic City decline. The Atlantic Club closed in January. The Showboat and Trump Plaza are also set to close this year. That will leave just 8 casinos in Atlantic City and just 5 on the once famed boardwalk. But what happens in Atlantic City does not stay there. The state will take a fiscal hit as well. Budget planners use revenue estimates to make their spending plans, and the numbers from Atlantic City, they're not adding up and they're not helping. In 2013, state budget planners assumed that Jersey would bring in $180 million just from online gaming, and made plans on how they're going to spend that money. Instead, the state took in less than $35 million from all gaming, online, and in casinos, which helped contribute to the state's $807 million budget shortfall. For some insight on what is ailing the gaming industry, we turn to Harold Vogel. Harold's a longtime media and gambling industry analyst and the head of Vogel Capital Management in New York City. He and I discussed the gaming industry earlier today. Whether it's a canary in the coal mine or it's a punctuation mark to something that we're seeing for trends everywhere, the idea that the Revel, which opened to such huge fanfare, I'm not talking a decade ago, I'm talking a few years ago, is going to be shuttering doors here, or, you know, you can buy it for the pound. If that doesn't give pause to people who say that bring casinos and they will come, I find few things that will. Just give an idea about just how much of a symbol the Revel ought to be, and I mean how much fanfare it came into market with versus where we are now.
Well, you are absolutely correct in your assessment of this. The Revel was a $2.4 billion investment, and it was supposed to revive the market in Atlantic City. Of course, in the time that it took to build it and finance it, you actually had casinos opening in Maryland and Pennsylvania and several other locations. And all of the market appears now to be very saturated. And it's kind of for the Catskills in upstate New York, be careful what you wish for, because casinos have giant costs attached to them when they start to operate, and they do not necessarily provide the high-income or middle-income jobs that are often promoted with their prospects.
And Hal, before I get to New York, if we just look around the Mid-Atlantic area or even the tri-state area, we're seeing cutbacks at both Mohegan and Foxwoods in Connecticut. We're seeing also a paring down of some of the casinos even in Pennsylvania. We're seeing Delaware, the state, having to go in their own pocket to subsidize some of these casinos as well. It's hard to find success stories in and around our region to say that, hey, this will work here. It's a sound strategy to build jobs here and to make revenue.
You're absolutely correct. Again, the casinos in the surrounding states have not been able to grow their revenues, which is a sign of saturation. And that saturation has to be put into context of a weaker economic environment than a lot of people think. The lower and middle income classes are not having an easy time of it, and they are not having the excess money to spend on casinos. And each state is kind of borrowing or cannibalizing from the other states. And it is impossible, in my opinion, to have this thing grow in an overall basis.
Isn't there also an additional danger in New York, which is, you know, you go to Yonkers and the racinos, they're doing pretty good. Isn't the idea that if you build these additional casinos, I know the betting money, pardon the pun, is that you're going to see one in Orange County, let alone the Catskills in upstate New York. that it'll cannibalize even the racinos, not just from money that's going out of state, but even taking money that's already being gambled in state.
That's correct. The racinos will see diminished revenues. They actually generate higher tax rates for the state. And the main thing that you have to understand in looking at the casino business is that it's fine if you're in Nevada and you have no other competition and you're inviting people into the state. You're importing earnings and visitations. When you can't do that, when all of the surrounding states also have casinos, you're not doing that. The second thing is that the presence of a casino generates additional costs and it wipes out the local businesses. So that's what I meant by be careful what you wish for, because if upstate New York thinks that it's going to net generate increases in taxes and in jobs, I think they're not looking at this realistically. The local businesses are usually devastated. They're within a half a mile or a few blocks of the casino. The casino sets up restaurants and bars and all kinds of other things that are available currently in the local businesses. Local businesses can't compete against that. So the net benefit of having a casino, especially in this day and age, is not clear at all. And in fact, it may be detrimental.
I can make the counter argument, if anybody's been up to the Catskills and you see almost the ghostly reminders of when the Borscht Belt was big, it's empty, Hal. They got to do something. Even if it's a gamble that has got certainly a lot of pitfalls to it, can't you make the argument that something's better than nothing for communities who really don't have much?
Well, I think it's what is the something? This something does not work. It only works for perhaps the banks that might extend the loans if they can get repaid, and Morgan Stanley didn't get repaid in the case of the Revel. It only works for the construction jobs that are temporary construction companies. After that, it just disappears. So yes, the people in upstate New York do need help. They need an economic booster, but this is not the right booster for them. They need other kinds of industries, other kinds of activities, rather than casinos, which attach themselves to very high costs of problem gaming, low-income jobs, questionable need for other services. It's just a question of is there too much competition and saturation? And my answer is yes.
Harold Vogel, I really appreciate a couple today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can you remember a story that's in slow motion that we know this isn't going to really work? Like, you can almost...
It's reminiscent of newspapers and the decline of newspapers that we've seen in the last 7-8 years, and we did a lengthy series about that. And it's similar in that you had these expensive operations that carried way too much debt and just weren't getting the return. But the difference is that casinos are because there's just too many places to play,
exactly,
as opposed to the revenue streams from newspapers. But that's sort of the slow dinosaur-esque.
But you know, Dominic, politically, governor is 100% on this. He put the thing on the ballot. I always love the language of the question to the voters, but he put it on the ballot. Public says they want it. He's building this thing no matter what. But you know, at the end of the day, the math ain't going to add up.
The math is not adding up, but I think that Governor Cuomo and others are counting on the huge population in New York with the hope that people will no longer, and this is a huge gamble. Christie just gambled on, made a bet on gambling and lost. But I think Cuomo's hoping that because of the population, people will stay home and gamble. We'll see.
But I think people also forget, though, Andrew, there is gambling in New York. When they say build something upstate, there's Turning Stone, you go to Verona, New York. There's actually stuff already. Nobody wants to acknowledge that.
And there's a lot of fear that it's going to significantly impact those, and you're going to see less profits from places like Empire City or from Turning Stone up in Verona. But, Dom, you hit on the fact that it's going to be stay-at-home gamblers, and that's fine. I mean, at least that money's not going out of state. But at the same time, from the larger societal standpoint, there's a cause for concern there, which is that this is not going to be money that's coming in from out of state. You're not going to get a lot of New York casino tourism. It's going to be New Yorkers who are giving over their money to these big corporations. And will that actually depress the economic level of the
the
entire region.
racinos, part of the deal they had to do is they had to put a lot of money into the education fund. Racinos do bad. There's less money coming to that. There's a whole bunch of questions, and I still am conflicted to say, you go up to the Catskills and you tell me that this isn't worth a shot, I'll debate you on that one. So we'll continue to follow this thing as it moves forward. But speaking of moving forward, we want you to make your opinion known on this one. Do you think it's a smart bet for states to build casinos? Well, go to Twitter and Facebook and give us your answer, especially if you're in one of those communities that'd be impacted by it. Okay, when we come back, we will go back to New Jersey, if you will, and we'll look back at a speech that shocked not only New Jersey, but America at the time. Former Governor Jim McGreevey coming out and stepping down. We asked the question, 10 years later, would America be just as shocked if a similar speech were made today?